Good evening, gentlemen. We are back to another session, and this time we are going to talk on something which is very important as far as the subcontinent is concerned, and it means concerning Pakistan and India. Basically, I'll talk about Pakistan and the role of the Pakistan Army after 1947. Now, the Pakistan Army is a very large force. It's almost the seventh largest army in the world, with a strength of almost 750,000, and it's got divided to 10 corps. They have 33 lieutenant generals, 197 major generals, and two four-star generals. I mean, one will ask, what is such a huge army doing? Well, they are doing the best thing which they can do, that is, enjoy themselves. That is the fact. And control the country. And they've been doing it for the last 64 years. Actually, it started around 55, 56, so you can take it, it's almost more than 64 years. Because that time, Major General Iskandar Mirza became the president of Pakistan and he appointed General Ayub as the defense minister. General Ayub Khan was the chief of the Pakistan army, and why he did it, we don't know. But then, Iskandar Mirza had an axe to grind, and he actually cut his own grinder and finished himself. Because Ayub Khan carried out a military coup against Mirza in 1958, and Mirza was woken up early in the morning at 4 o'clock, and a pistol was put to his head, and the man who did it was a person called Brigadier Yahya Khan, who later on became general and chief of the Pakistan army, and then later the president. This man took Iskandar Mirza to the first plane flying to London and sent him there, exile. And that man died in London in very poor condition, and his body was not allowed to come back to Pakistan. It was buried in Tehran, courtesy the Shah of Iran, Reza Pahlavi. So this is something like dog eats dog. You can't imagine this sort of situation happening. Well, Pakistan has been like that. But one thing I'll say about Ayub, from 58 to 68 is probably the best time Pakistan ever had, which is, that's why they call it the decade of development. There was no development, but at least there was stability. And Ayub, being a Sanders trained officer, was more angelicized than the others, and he didn't bring Islamic laws in force. In fact, he brought in a family ordinance that restricted marriages, and he did a lot of good for Pakistan. But he was not above board, because in the election against Fatima Jinnah for the post of president, he probably would have lost, but he rigged up the election, and Fatima Jinnah, the sister of Muhammad Ali Jinnah, lost. Ayub, however, overstepped his brief when he went into a war with India in 1965. Now, that was the time Ayub thought, and he should have thought better. He thought the Indian army was a pushover. He made his assessment from the way the Indians had fought the Chinese in 1962. But as I said, he should have known better because he had been part of the Indian army. Now, despite whatever you might say, or Ayub might say, actually, as per my information, he was from the Chamar regiment. And later, after 46, the Chamar regiment was disbanded, and he began to say he's from some other regiment, not the Chamar regiment. He said he's from the Baluch. Well, it really doesn't matter because he then made himself field marshal also, and he'd been the only field marshal in the Pakistan army. But in 68, as I told you, he had to go. And later on, he had a very sorry end. And he handed over power to Yahya Khan. Now, Yahya Khan, I mean, was another good man, let me tell you. But he was in fond of the good things of life. He wanted to enjoy himself. He had a lot of love affairs here and there. And he had a celebrated consort with named Noor Jahan, the famous Pakistani singer. And I was reading his biography at one stage when she was in Japan. He was on the line, on telephone with her, talking to her. He told her to sing a song from Japan, and he was sitting and listening and dancing. And he was really not a realistic man, though he had good ideas. He was the man who got the first one man, one vote system going in Pakistan. Well, all credit to him, he did it. But when the election was won by Mujibur Rahman of the Awami Party, he developed cold feet because of pressure from the politicians of West Pakistan led by Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. And that result was a charge of treason was framed against Mujib. He was arrested, brought to Lahore, and was being tried by a military court. And then there was a war. And despite all the information being fed to him that Dhaka has been surrounded, I think 3 days before that he was holding a party in the president's house. So he had to go. He went. And when he went very sadly. He was put in house arrest for about 7 years and only released once General Zia came into power, and then he died. So it has been a sad end for these two generals. Now the man who came into power was Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, another maverick man, a very brilliant man, but maverick, a man who was a megalomaniac. He wanted to be everything and everything put together with him in charge. So he became the chief martial law administrator, he became the president, but he framed a constitution in which he became the prime minister. And the president was required to appoint somebody else. And he was wary of the army because the army, after losing the war against India in 1971, had been sent in the barracks. So there was nothing much the army could do. And so in that situation, he appointed General Zia Haq as the president of Pakistan. Sorry, as the chief of the army staff, my mistake. Zia was actually from Jalandhar. He was a Punjabi who had migrated from Punjab, India, and gone there. And he was a very ambitious man. And he is known also as the Mullah General because he was a very, very strict Islamic follower. Now, when he came to power, he had ambitions. And Bhutto, as usual, was playing to the gallery. The economy of Pakistan had gone down. There was unrest. The opposition was agitating against him. And in one of the elections, the last one, it was totally rigged. There's no doubt about it. And Bhutto won the rigged election, so he thought he would continue. But there was a grave charge against him that earlier in 71, he was responsible for the breakup of Pakistan. And probably he had to pay a price. And this time there was a military coup. Zia took over. He rang him up early morning and told him, "Sir, I have taken over." Bhutto didn't expect what's going to happen next. But then perhaps he didn't know that his fate had been sealed. And General Chishti and other generals, corps commanders all decided that Bhutto must be executed from the scene. They had earlier offered Bhutto a chance that you can go away from Pakistan in exile. But Bhutto thought he's all powerful. I mean, he was talking of Islamic bomb. He was talking himself of him as a great Islamic leader. See, people must be realistic, and he didn't know his power. He didn't know his limitations. Bhutto was tried in the Punjab High Court for a murder which he had not committed. That's a fact. Ramsey Clark, the former Attorney General of the Americans, attended the trial, and he found it was a farcical trial. Fictitious information was being passed. Witnesses were changing their evidence. In such circumstances, it was a travesty of law, but Bhutto was sentenced to death by hanging by the Punjab High Court. Now, this itself raises eyebrows because normally in the system of judicial system being followed in India and Pakistan, the trial first starts in the Sessions Court, and then there's an appeal in the High Court and then Supreme Court. But in this case, it started in the High Court, there was an appeal in the Supreme Court, but by a split verdict, the Supreme Court upheld the High Court decision, and Bhutto at 4 o'clock in the morning was hanged. Now, I've dwelt with some length on this topic because it just shows the nature of Pakistan politics, the nature of the men who are ruling Pakistan. They don't give any mercy to anybody, and the whole aim is to see whatever you can appropriate yourself. It's like dog eats dog. And Zia had to pay the price. and he paid the price when people were looking for to gun him down. And after being in power for almost a decade in '89, if I remember correctly, his plane was blown up. There was an inquiry. Nobody knew what happened after that. Inquiry was put under wraps, and even I don't know about it. What exactly happened? We can only make conjectures, but the fact is he was killed because of his antics. Then came a period of instability, and Zulfikar Ali's Bhutto's daughter came in this limelight. I think she was basically a very mediocre person with very little horizon. I must say that. But she became Prime Minister of Pakistan twice, and both times she was an absolute failure. She was also building up rhetoric against India, and she was feeling a threat from Murtaza Bhutto, her brother. And there are reports that Bhutto was killed when she was coming out of his house. Murtaza was coming out of his house in Karachi, and the federal police or somebody went and shot him dead. But it's been never improved. There's no inquiry, nothing. But eyebrows are certainly raised. But she also had to pay a price. She was overthrown, and then Nawaz Sharif became the prime minister. Now, he at one time was the pratik of Zia ul Haq, and he was a very strong jihadi type of man, and he thought he was very clever, just like Bhutto, which I failed to mention. He had selected Zia from Jalandhar as the army chief, though he was fifth in the order of seniority. Same thing happened with Sharif, Nawaz Sharif. He chose Musharraf, who was junior, and he thought since he's a Muajir from Delhi, he will be amenable and listen to him and he will continue his rule. It didn't happen that way. Later, the Kargil operation took place, and perhaps Sharif didn't know about it. When Sharif didn't know about it, later on he realized that Musharraf was playing a double game, and he appointed another man as the army chief when Musharraf was on a visit to Sri Lanka. Musharraf came back and the army rallied behind him. Nawaz Sharif was arrested and put in the jail, and he was being brought to trial in an armored car like a criminal murderer, and he was demoralized completely. And I have information that Musharraf and the corps commanders already decided that he must be hanged. But every day is not Sunday, and this time the Saudis intervened in force, and they told it very clear, made it very clear to Musharraf and the generals that they would not countenance the execution of Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, and they offered to take him to Saudi Arabia. Musharraf, under pressure, economically not doing well, agreed. He had no choice, really. And finally, what happened was that even this gentleman, Nawaz Sharif, went for 10 years to Pakistan, to Saudi Arabia on exile, and he was there. His daughter married one of the princes there, and his business began to flourish. But he harbored a grudge against Musharraf, and very rightly so. Now, Benazir was coming into the scene at that time. Benazir was coming back to power. She had learned from her previous stints as prime minister that everything is not honky dory and you got to do things properly. And this time, she became a threat to Musharraf. She asked for permission to get the security guards from America, the Blackwater security. Musharraf refused. Maybe he knew something, and maybe he was in league with the Taliban or the extremists. But in the same place where Yahya Khan had been shot dead in 1951, where she was arresting a meeting, she was attacked in a terrorist operation and killed. It's a sad commentary for Pakistan. And now what happened after that was that Musharraf came under pressure and he had to resign. In fact, the judges were against him. He had overstepped his mandate. The Chief Justice of Pakistan was after him. He was a man with guts, Justice Chaudhry, and he ensured that this man had to resign and go away. The Pakistan Supreme Court is another rubber stamp. I don't think they have ever given any proper discussion, any judgment. In fact, on 3 occasions, This army, this Supreme Court went and justified military rule by saying it's required as per the doctrine of necessity. Now, what is the doctrine of necessity? It's all bull. It's an old ancient Roman theory wherein it says that if there is total chaos, the doctrine of necessity can impose and order brought about. It's never been used anywhere else. I'm not aware that this doctrine was used anywhere other than that perhaps during the Roman time. But they used it Pakistan 3 times. Supreme Court justified it. Credit to Justice Chaudhary. He said this provision will not be used in future. I don't know, but he's given that ruling. Musharraf went away, and then Sharif came back. He came back, and then there was the election which was coming up, and Sharif was going to win. Initially, Zardari's party, the People's Party, won, but they were just marking time. And when Zardari's party came, he came with almost two-thirds majority, and he began to exert himself, and he put Musharraf on trial. Musharraf, who had gone away, exiled to London, came back, and he had some false sense of his importance. He thought he's going to win election, and he couldn't win anything. He was arrested in the court, put on trial for murder, and put in a house arrest. And perhaps Sharif wanted his revenge. He took it. But there was a chap called General Kiani, who at that time was the army chief, and the army couldn't countenance the fact that one of the former chiefs should be tried for murder and for treason. So pressure was put on Sharif, and Bhutto, and this gentleman was exiled to Dubai. He's still there. He's didn't come back to Pakistan, and the trial has gone into limbo. But there was a judgment given by a tribunal of the Punjab High Court which had said that Musharraf should be hanged to death. And one of the judges had said, it's a very laughable judgment, I've read it. He says Musharraf's body should be hung in Freedom Square in Islamabad as an example to people who betray Pakistan. So it's a sad end for Musharraf. Luckily, the judgment was finally set aside, but Musharraf was not there. He was sitting in Dubai. He can't come back. And now the situation is going worse. Now, what has happened, as I told you, Pakistan army is a lopsided, huge entity eating into the budget. And the Pakistan budget is absolutely in doldrums. They have taken loans. They don't know how to repay. At the same time, they're keeping this army. But thanks to the Americans who have been giving them weapons, the army is flourishing. Even now, the Americans have given about $400 million for the upgradation of the F-16s. America, as I told you, always plays a double game, but they have a deep stakes in Pakistan, and they have some sort of a love for Pakistan, because in 1954, Pakistan was one of the first countries which joined the Americans in the crusade against communism. The Americans knew that all this was a facade. I mean, it got no mere relevance. But what Pakistan really interested was to fight India. They tried to fight India in 71, got defeated. 65, they couldn't win the war. 98, they tried tactics in Kargil, were not successful. Probably at that time, if the Indian leadership had been astute, forward-looking, aggressive, they could have finished Pakistan, but they didn't do it. Even 98, 65, and 48, the Indian army could have easily moved in, taken large swaths of territory in East Pakistan and used as a bargaining chip for Kashmir. But it didn't occur, neither do our generals nor do the political leadership. The generals, of course, who came over had no horizon, and that's a fact. Because when in 47, when the British went away, the Indian army, the senior most officer was a brigadier. I mean, what is the horizon? I mean, he was not a general. He didn't have a single general, and these gentlemen were promoted major general, lieutenant general, and in the vacuum they were sucked up. So they were out of their depth. They had no comprehension of power politics. And of course, Pandit Nehru and these gentlemen also knew nothing. So the question is, the Pakistan army was able to survive because of the apathy and the weak leadership of the Indians. Maybe it's got something to do with Muslim rule being in India for almost 900 years. I don't know, but a psychologist has to go and study this aspect of it. But now, Nawaz Sharif, who was having a honky-dory time, was basically, I presume, doing some underhand dealings. you can't have smoke without fire. Maybe the charges are not serious or not there, but in the Panama Papers this came up, and later on investigation found that he got palatial houses in London. He was removed by the Pakistan Supreme Court. He was not allowed to complete his tenure, and here's another fact which you might like to know, that no Pakistani prime minister ever completed his tenure. And same thing happened with our good friend Nawaz Sharif. He was removed, and he had nothing else to do but to go away to into jail. He was tried, given 10 years in prison. Even that time, I wrote a lot of articles in favor of Sharif. I didn't think he was guilty. I thought it was a plan by the Pakistan army to remove him. Yes, it was a plan to remove him, but there was, as I told you, no smoke without fire. He's not like Modi, selfless. So finally, he fell seriously sick in the court, and ultimately the Supreme Court allowed him to go on bail and for treatment to London and then come back after 3 years. And everybody knew he was not going to come back, and he's still there and he's not going to come back. Though now, Imran Khan, the next man who became prime minister with the support of the army, has also been overthrown. Now, all this period which I'm talking is the army has been the big brother. I wonder if you all read the book 1984 by George Orwell. There's a big brother there at the back. He's controlling everything. And the army is the same thing in Pakistan. Whether they are at the back or in the front or at the facade, they are the ones who call the shots. And they brought Imran into power, and then they also threw him out. When they realized that Imran is now overstepping his brief, he's becoming bigger than us. Nobody can tolerate that. So Imran was removed by a midnight vote, and he lost by just 2 votes, and he went out. Maybe the Americans also had a hand, because America has been feeling very cut up after Imran Khan became the prime minister. He went to Russia, and when he was there, the invasion of Ukraine began. He made a very serious remark by saying, "Wonderful fireworks all around." I mean, the Americans didn't like it. All that is part of the game. But when he came back, probably his days were numbered. And now he's sitting outside, running a freedom march. And the brother of Nawaz Sharif, Shahbaz Sharif, has become the prime minister. Shahbaz has also got a number of corruption cases against him. These brothers have laundered money. I can't make such a statement. May be true, may not be true. But they definitely something has been going around which is fishy. Otherwise, even the Pakistanis who are outside wouldn't be shouting chor chor when went to Jeddah. And one of his finance ministers was in Washington, who was also called a thief when he went there, Ishaq Dar. So the situation is very volatile, and the army again is the one force which can pull Pakistan again. That is the problem. There is nobody else united. The opposition is fragmented. The political parties are fragmented. The army is the only uniting force at the moment. And in the recent Corps Commanders Conference, there was a talk of a military coup, but nobody wavered it, because things are not same as what it was in, say 78 or 98, when you can have a military coup and send people into jail and hang them. Now it's not going to happen. The world has changed. Gentlemen, Pakistan on the precipice of destruction. They're facing an insurrection in Balochistan. The army doesn't know what to do. The basic thing is the economy. The Pakistan rupee has tanked. There is very little development, rather no development. Huge loans have to be paid to the Chinese. Pakistan is looking for going around with a begging bowl. Saudi Arabia, as usual, is giving them the dole. But it's like putting money into an abyss. It's not going to come back, and nothing going to happen in Pakistan. It's going to continue. The army still continues to be the powerful source. And no wonder Joe Biden has just gone on and said that Pakistan is the most dangerous country on the earth. Yes, they are, because they have a nuclear arsenal. I do not know what is their command and control over that lethal weaponry. We do not know. But God forbid, if something happens and some jihadis get control of that nuclear arsenal, Pakistan may well cease to exist on this earth. There is a very big element of people in Pakistan and from other Muslim countries which are not happy with the way Pakistan is functioning. Pakistan is a democracy, theoretically, But at the same time, there's certain amount of freedoms are still there, and they do not want that. They want pristine Islamic law to be enforced in Pakistan. There's a danger. We'll have to see what happens. So this could be an internal upheaval, but then the army might put a stop to it. The army is got a double face. It is the only entity in Pakistan which can bring stability. But at the same time, it's like a Frankenstein monster. You created it, you can't don't know what to do with it. The politicians have failed Pakistan. Pakistan itself is in serious trouble. It could lead to a civil war. My personal feeling is that in the decades to come, Pakistan is going to break up. We'll have to wait and see if it happens or no. In the meanwhile, I'll close now, gentlemen, and say, Jai Hind. I hope all of you have a good time. Look after yourself, subscribe to my video, share it with your friends. Goodbye.